Hi everyone, welcome to the School Improvement Institute webinar on intervention preparation. My name is Sue Reynolds and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So we'll begin with a real quick review and then we'll get right into preparation. So in your last step that you've just completed, you identified your interventions, and we're now getting ready to prepare those interventions so that they are implemented fully and implemented with integrity. So as a reminder, in the last step when we were preparing your interventions, we did a little bit of initial preparation as we were selecting your interventions. So you have already identified for each of your interventions the person responsible for that intervention, the implementation dates, and then this next part is really important because it influences what we're doing today. So in the last step, you said for each of your interventions, do you want to evaluate that intervention? Is there going to be professional development for the intervention? Do you need to find funding to make that intervention happen? And then finally, are there resources that you need in order to be able to do that, implement that intervention well? So what the work that we do in this step, in the preparation step, is based on these checks. Whatever you checked in the last step is what the system is going to ask you to prepare in this step. And you will be able to go back and edit those if you've changed your mind. So that was in the last step, in the intervention step. Okay. So today then we're talking about preparation, and then we've already done two steps. So you can see that the person's responsible, oh I see a typo there, sorry. The person's responsible you've already done for each of your interventions, and the timeline you've already done for the intervention. So in this step, for each intervention, depending on what you selected in the last step, you're going to be developing the evaluation plan for that intervention, professional development, your funding securement plan, and your resource securement plan. Okay, so let's talk about preparation. As I mentioned, there are 4 parts to preparing an intervention. And when we do these steps, we know that it's more likely that the intervention is going to be implemented well and implemented fully. So one of the steps that we want to look at is evaluation. Another one is professional development, and then funding securement and resource securement. So, and as a reminder, again, you selected the parts that you want to develop as part of the last step, and I'll show you in a minute how to edit that if you've changed your mind. Also, if you are a focus or priority school, some of these components will automatically appear in interventions if the intervention has been linked to a turnaround principle. Okay, so I'm just going to go through each of the 4 components. The first one is evaluation. When you open up the system, you'll see that there's 4 tabs, and these tabs will be different for each of your interventions depending on which components you selected to include. So in this intervention, the 7th grade ratios lessons, we told the system that we wanted to develop an evaluation plan for that intervention, professional development plan, funding plan, and a resource securement plan. So these are the questions that you'll be asked to address. I'm going to cover those later when we do the system walkthrough. In terms of professional development, you'll be entering the types of professional development that you want to do, and we want to make sure that the professional development is good, sound professional development. So when you enter the professional development, one of the things that you're going to be asked to identify is, does this professional development meet the needs of individuals who need an introduction? Or are people already aware of the intervention and now we just need to help them prepare for how to deliver that intervention? Or are they trying it for the first time and now they need some feedback about how they're doing? Or is this routine use and now we're just kind of fine-tuning that intervention? So professional development activities can have several different focuses. Okay, so this is what we call our table of stages of professional development. So the first stage is interest or pre-interest, and what folks will be asking when you're introducing the intervention at this point is, what is this and how is this going to impact me? Specifically, they're thinking, is this going to take me more time? Am I going to have to do something differently? When you first introduce an intervention, it takes people out of their comfort zones. So what we want to do is provide them with some general information, and then we want to be aware that you're probably going to hit some resistance as soon as you mention a new intervention. So we want to assure people that this isn't going to take more time, that we're going to provide professional development. We're going to be there every step of the way to help them as they are developing and implementing this intervention. So some activities that you might want to do is group presentations. I like to, at this point, do one-on-one discussions, because then if people do have resistance, I can kind of tease that out and assure them that everything's going to be okay. So, and then another option is to take people to other schools to observe that intervention to see how it all is working once it gets implemented. So once people are interested, then they're in the next stage, which is preparation. And at this point, they're kind of stressed because they're thinking, okay, I get why we need to be doing this, but I'm not sure I know how to do it, or I'm not sure I can do it well. So the focus of the professional development at this step, at this stage, is to give people knowledge and skill building, to give them opportunities to rehearse the intervention, to reflect about how that felt, and then to give them feedback on their rehearsals. So some things that you could do are one-to-one coaching works great there. You could do workshops, you could do small learning communities. So we're giving people a chance to learn how to do it and then to practice doing it before they're doing it for real. In the next stage is we call early use, and in that stage people are just trying out the intervention for the first time, and they're wondering, am I doing this okay? So observation is really good there, and then reflection, yeah, you did great there, or I saw you got stuck in this spot and here's a suggestion. So observation, reflection, feedback, those are really good professional development activities to do as people are just starting to implement an intervention. So, and ways you could do that is through principal observations. We love it when schools do peer observations because both teachers learn. Small learning communities where, small groups of teachers just get together to chat about, okay, we tried it, here's how it went in my classroom, how did it go in your classroom, and then one-to-one coaching. And then finally, after people have been using the intervention for a while, we need to fine-tune that intervention, and we call that stage routine use. It's been going on for a while, and teachers are starting to ask, how do I improve? And at that point, we want to go back to knowledge and skills, reflection, and feedback. The activities would vary again, but it's probably going to be a lot of observation and mentoring and coaching. So, okay, so those are the stages of professional development, and when you're developing professional development in our system, we're going to ask you to show activities that would address every single one of those stages up to early use. If it's a brand new intervention, you're probably not going to get to routine use yet, but we'd expect you to see some professional development activities that introduce the idea, that help teachers prepare for it and practice and rehearse it, and then supported teachers as they started to first use that intervention for the first time. Our experience has been that when schools don't have sound professional development, especially for the more comprehensive interventions, that the interventions don't go well in the beginning and everybody gets frustrated and the interventions end up being dropped. With sound professional development, those interventions will hit the road running and will be successful. Okay, we've developed a professional development planning guide for you. In the handouts that are with this presentation, you'll find not only the slides that we're looking at, but you'll also find this professional development planning guide. And it really goes into each of the stages of professional development in a lot of depth. Schools have told us that they have found this to be very, very helpful. Okay, so as you're entering your professional development activities, the system will start to show the activities with the implementation dates, and then it will start to show, is this an introduction activity, a preparation, or an early use or a routine use? And this is what we want to see. We want to see how the teachers have been introduced to a concept and intervention, how we help them prepare to implement that intervention, and then how we and then that we supported them as they were implementing in their early use. It's okay for one activity to hit a couple of these, so maybe you're going to do one activity that's both going to introduce and prepare. That's fine. My guess is you probably we would never see an activity that introduced, prepared, and did early use at the same time. Early use is going to happen after the teachers have tried using the intervention for the first time. Okay, on the funding screen, we're just wanting to know, is there funding for this activity that's going to be required? And in this case, we said yes, $50, and we're going to do a presentation to the PTA about the purchase of ratio manipulatives, and hopefully gain funding from them. And then this is just how you enter the funding. It's pretty simple. And then on resources, the same kind of thing. What resources do we need? So how to teach ratios, teacher version, and we're going to download that, and that's the step. And then so we enter the step in and then hit save. So it's very simple. It does take some thought, especially on the evaluation and the professional development. Okay, so again, why prepare interventions? It increases the odds that the intervention is going to be fully implemented. Do we need to prepare all interventions? No. And during the intervention step, you identified the interventions that you wanted to prepare. And again, if you don't like what you identified, you can go back and change that, and I'll show you how to do that when we get online. Okay, so before we get online, I also wanted to show you that after you have prepared the interventions, there's all kinds of reports that are going to spit out, and then I'll show them to you and explain how you might use them. So one is the preparation report. This is a report that appears for each individual intervention. So if I am the person responsible for the 7th grade ratios unit intervention, I can print out this report, or my principal may hand me this report as a reminder that here's how I'm going to evaluate this intervention, here's the professional development that we have planned for this intervention, here's the funding securement, here's the resource securement. So it's just kind of a summary of the intervention for the person that's responsible for that intervention being implemented fully and with integrity. Okay. Then there is a rubric that goes with that preparation report, and so once all of your interventions are in and we can access that report, then Tina will go through this rubric item. Probably the one that we flag the most is that the professional development includes a series of activities that address the different professional development stages. So one other thing I wanted to point out here is to remember that all of our interventions are designed to influence an adult practice. So when we go to evaluate, we want to say, okay, which adults were we trying to change in terms of their practices, and what are we going to count to make sure that that's happened. Okay, there is another report called the Professional Development Report, and it lists the professional development activities for all of your interventions collectively. So here's the 7th grade ratios unit that we were just looking at. Here's the math club unit. So the purpose of this report is that one of the steps that you need to do in Indiana for Public Law 221, so all schools have to do this, is to have your exclusive rep sign off on your professional development. So this is a report that you can just hand to your professional development or your exclusive rep and say, here's the professional development that we're planning to do with our interventions. Hopefully your exclusive rep in your building has been involved in looking at those interventions and has been part of the process. But if not, you can give them this report and they can read through and approve. Okay, and then here's the rubric for the professional development summary. And all schools, professional development has been included for all comprehensive strategies, and professional development activities collectively create a culture of collegiality and collaboration. Those are the two things that we're looking for with your professional development. Then also, just real quickly, if you are a focused targeted school, so not a priority school, not a focus school, but a focused targeted school, those schools have specific requirements for professional development. Some of those schools do. And these two rubric items explain that. So read through that. If you have questions, call Tina and she can go over that with you. Then another report that the system will spit out after you're finished entering your preparation is the preparation to-do list. And this is a chronological list of all of the tasks that you've put in to the system. It tells you the date that this task is going to be completed by, what intervention it relates to, what prep area, what component it is, so professional development or resources or funding, and then what the task is. So, so that is the to-do list for all of your interventions together. Okay, so your next few steps are to watch the video, the rest of this video, and then to enter your preparations, and then the very end part is to submit your SIP and your SAP, if required to DOE. So I'll go through the online system and then I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's look at that online system. So I'm logged in as Demo High School again. I'm going to scroll down near the bottom now. And to the preparation section. Okay, so on this preparation section, the first thing we're doing is watching the video. You're already doing that. And then read the Professional Development Planning Guide. So here's a link where you can download that, although it's also attached to the webinar. Enter your preparations. So let's look at how to do that. So notice over here that there's a message that's telling me that 3 of my interventions I indicated in the last step that I wanted to prepare them in some way. So, and right now it's telling me that there are 3 not submitted. Later it will say 3 submitted, or 3 meet criteria, or 2 meet criteria, 1 needs revision. So again, this is kind of your little hints on where you are in terms of completing your work. So I'm going to go ahead and click enter. And here are some instructions. And I'm going to scroll down. Here are all of my interventions. So for Demo High School, we just have 4. We know you're going to have a lot more than that. Okay, so first thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that one of the interventions is gray, and it says not applicable. That's because in the last step, I didn't indicate that I wanted to develop this intervention at all. I thought it could be done without any preparation. So the other thing I wanted to point out is in this revised column, this is something new that you haven't seen before. We know that as you start to develop and to prepare for these interventions, you may decide things like, you know, I really don't need funding for that, or I really do need resources that I'd like to type in here, so I make sure that gets on the calendar and I remember to do that. So one of the things that you can do from this screen and the next screen is to hit this orange revise button, and that will take me to the last step. And I can go in here and I can say, you know, I really don't want to secure any funding. So I'm just going to click that, and then actually I'm not going to click it right now because I want to be able to show you that. But and then I'm just going to save, and that any edits that you make there will then show on the preparation page. Okay, so then let's say now I'm ready to prepare this intervention. So 7th grade ratios learning sequence, lesson sequence. So I'm going to click on enter, and you'll notice that all 4 tabs are at the top. So that means that in the last step I checked all 4 of these things. And again, if you want to change that, just go up here to edits. That will take you back to the last step, and you can change that. And if you do change it, it will remove that tab. Also, you can see that 2 of the tabs have checks on them. That means that I've already finished those tabs. So I've got 2 tabs ready to go. So let's start out with the evaluation tab, and I can show you what I've put in. So remember that this lesson, or this intervention, is 7th grade ratios lesson sequence. So the first question is asking me which adults is this intervention designed to impact. So 7th grade teachers, I might want to edit that to say 7th grade math teachers. What practice is this intervention trying to bring about in that adult group? The practice is to provide a sequence of lessons on ratios. What will you count to determine the degree to which this practice exists? And now you have a choice. You can count the number of something, or you can count the percentage of something. I usually like to use percentages. I think most schools find that percentages work better because then you kind of know, are you capturing everything or just a portion of everything? So I clicked percentage of, and then 7th grade, let's edit that, math teachers who implement a ratios lesson sequence. My baseline data I collected on August 23rd, and at that time none of my 7th grade math teachers were doing that, so my baseline data was 0. I'm going to check that again a year from now. So at the end of next school year, I'm going to do that again. However, we've also given you a note here that having a March 1st evaluation date will allow you to evaluate this intervention prior to establishing interventions for the 2017-18 school year. So I'm thinking, you know, I probably am going to teach those ratio lessons before May 17th, and actually it probably would be before March 1st. So I'm just going to say I'm going to finish this, I'm going to edit this, say I'm going to do it by March 1st, or it could be, you know, December 3rd or whatever date you want to put in there. And my target data is that I want every single one of those math teachers to do that. So I'm putting in 100%. Who's going to be responsible for collecting the follow-up data? Jane Doe. And then entry for this tab is complete, and then save. Okay. One other caution here is just the biggest mistake that we see, or issue that we find on this page, is that sometimes schools will put a student group in here. And remember, for SI2 work, we believe that before students will change their practices, adults have to change practices. And so all of our interventions are focused on helping the adults do something differently, so that as a result of that, the students will change their practices. We can't expect kids to learn ratios, for example, unless adults are teaching ratios. So all of our interventions in SI2 are focused on adults. Okay, so we've got that one done. Let's look at professional development. So I've put a couple of professional development steps in here. I put in a ratios lesson intro, so when I checked off that was an introductory activity. I put in 2 workshops where teachers would be developing those lesson plans and practicing the delivery of the lesson. So those were preparation. But if that's all I do, now I've got a problem, because teachers are prepared to do it, but I haven't yet, they haven't yet done those lessons, and we haven't given them any feedback or allowed them to have any comments about how those lessons went. So I really need one more professional development activity, at least one more, that would be an early use activity. So I'm going to go ahead and add a professional development activity. And the activity is going to be, let's say, peer observations, peer observation and feedback. Person responsible is going to be the peer teachers. And then I might even name those, Jane Doe, Sue Smith, you know, etc. The targeted adult group that I'm wanting to change their practices as a result of this professional development is the 7th grade math teachers. And this is an early use. So in the activity description, I might say something like, after a block of time during which 7th grade math teachers will implement the ratios lesson sequence for the first time while observed by a peer. The peers will provide feedback during a workshop. I think you get the gist of that. So what's the primary learning style? This is going to be auditory, and because we're talking to the teachers that we're coaching. But remember, not all teachers are auditory learners. So it may be too that, in some of your professional development that you want to bring in visual or kinesthetic. So when's the activity date going to be? Let's say, I think the last workshop was the end of September, so let's give them till the end of October to implement those lessons. Will this occur during contract hours? Yes. And the anticipated results are that the 7th grade math teachers will identify in writing areas where they can improve upon the teaching of ratios. Okay. I might mention too that all of this is aligned with the Indiana Departments of Education best practices for professional development. So we wanted to make sure that when you're chatting with a DOE consultant, that that you're able to talk about, did this happen during school time or outside of contract time? One question I forgot here. Who's going to facilitate this? Joe Green. Okay, so I have that all completed, and you can see this kind of makes you think about the professional development too as you're developing it. So this is not something, professional development in our system is not something that you can just do without any thought. You've got to think about how are we going to set up this intervention so that it's successful. Okay, I'm going to save. And now if I look at this, I see a very nice sequence of introduction, preparing the teachers, and then helping them out, giving them tips after they've tried it. So now I'm going to do enter for this tab is complete and save. Okay, resources, I've already done that, but it's very easy to do. Adding a task, you get a little pop-up and you just say, what are you going to do to secure the resources, who's going to do it, and what's your deadline. Same thing with funding. How much money are you going to need? And I think we can say, $50. How will this funding be used to purchase cardboard for manipulatives, and then I can put in an action plan as well to give me steps for doing that. So I'm going to put in save, and now all 4 tabs are checked, so I'm finished with that one. So when I go back, so I'm going to go back to select another intervention, and when I go back, I can now submit this intervention. You can see it's checked because all of the 4 tabs are complete. And now I'm going to submit this for Tina to review, and I'm going to say who's submitting it, and submit. Okay, select another preparation, and that's it. So one thing I did want to show you is that on activity period for Math Club, oops, wrong one. When you go to enter that one, I just want to show you how there's only 2 tabs for that one. And again, if we think, oh, I really do need professional development for this, I can just go right up here, click this button, and that'll take me back to where to click that you wanted to enter professional development. Okay, let's go back to the process page. And I'm going to scroll down. So that's the gist of it. And then after you have all of your preparation finished, and and you've got everything in there, then we need you to give us a heads up that you're finished with preparation. When you do that, all those, when you give us that heads up, all those reports generate. So we need you in step 4 to confirm that all preparations have been entered. So you confirm that, and then Tina is knowing that she's not waiting for you to submit any other preparations, that you're finished. All the reports become hot, and then we can go on. So we are in this one, we're submitting your professional development plan. We just want, you don't have to do anything, it just automatically appears, but we want you to look it over. If you're happy with it, just submit it. That lets us know that you're happy. Then we want to seek your local teacher association approval for the professional development plan. There will be a link here where you can download that plan as well. So, and then that plan, that the other thing we'll put here is a link to DOE's form that you fill out, or that your exclusive rep will fill out. That form has to be housed in the principal's office, or in central, or in your principal's office in your building. So you don't have to submit that form to DOE. You don't have to submit it to us. We are going to ask you just to give us a heads up that you've done that, we've got your exclusive rep's signature and that it's on file in your principal's office. That's a DOE requirement, and it's something that you're going to have to assure DOE that you've done when you upload your SIP. Okay. Then this is another report that just spits out the preparation task list, and you'll just tell us that you've distributed that to your teachers, so everybody's on board, everybody knows what the steps are to implement the interventions. And then here's the rubric. Okay, then your final step is to submit this button for a final review on our part. And really, on our part, your plan is already approved, because everything above this step is going to say meets criteria before you get here. So we're not going to change anything on our end. We're just going to say, yep, you've told us that you're finished with your school improvement plan, that you're happy with it, and we're just going to let you know that we're happy with it too. And I'll show you back on the slides what happens when we do that final approval. So again, you're just letting us know we're not going to make any more revisions, and then we'll say, okay, we approve everything the way it is. And again, everything above here will already say meets criteria, so we're not going to change any of that. Once everything up here says meets criteria, then it meets criteria. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. So when you do that final submission, and then we say, okay, we know you're finished and you're happy and we're happy too, because everything above there says meets criteria. The next thing that you're going to do is submit your SIP and SAP to DOE. So you'll know that you're ready to do that, because at the top of your process page, when you've told us you're happy and we're saying, okay, we're happy also, ASAI's happy as well, you'll get this row of balloons. You can't miss them. They're huge. So when you see those balloons, it means that we have looked at, over the past months that we've been working with you, we've approved everything for PL 221 requirements. It also means that we will send DOE a letter on your behalf that says that your school has met all the requirements for PL 221. And as a reminder, DOE does not do a second read. We have an agreement with them that when we read on behalf of them, and so once we've approved you for PL 221, once we've certified that you've met all the requirements for PL 221, then they accept that that's the case. Those balloons also tell you that you're ready to submit to DOE, and here's how you do that. So on the very bottom of the process page, there's this final big step 10. You download your school improvement plan. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Just click that button, and then you just click the upload to DOE. This will take you to DOE's website, and you just upload your SIP to DOE. Then, if you are a focus or a priority school, just a reminder that you also have to submit a student achievement plan. You click this button, it downloads, then you send it as an email attachment to your DOE outreach coordinator, And if you just click this button, that will take you to DOE's website that gives you the email addresses for all of the outreach coordinators and shows you who your outreach coordinator is. Okay, so that's how you submit them. Very simple, shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. Just wanted to show you what those look like. So when you download your school improvement plan, so every school will have a school improvement plan, it will be several pages long, and it will include a cover sheet, and I just wanted to show you the table of contents. So there's an overview that explains about the organizational structure, your school improvement process, your data-driven decision-making, how that worked. And then we have dropped in your vision statement, your academic goals, your root causes, your interventions. The preparation is in there. And then there's a couple of things that we pulled out of some of your root cause analysis, things that DOE and PL 221 that we need them to see to meet all of those requirements. So we just pulled those out and put them in as appendices. Okay, so that's your school improvement plan. Again, just push a button and it pops out. And then for focus and priority schools, this is what the student achievement plan looks like. So, and this follows the template from DOE exactly. So this is what DOE's template looks like. We need a principal signature before you upload that or send it to your outreach coordinator, superintendent signature, so just like DOE's form. And then here's your table of contents. This is quite a lengthy report because we've included all of your data reports. We wanted to make sure that your outreach coordinator was able to see all of your data. So there are pages and pages and pages of achievement data in there. It's actually the same information as the SIP, but we've organized it differently to meet their template. So you can see that we have SMART goals, and then we have information about the turnaround principles and how you're meeting those principles. So, okay, so that's the SAP, and again, that's only required for focus and priority schools. Okay, so final thing, if you have questions, and we know you will, please call Tina. Don't forget the deadlines. We need you to be completed with all of your work by September 30th so that we can send DOE that list of schools that meet all the requirements of PL 221 on October 1st. So and also remember that you can move right on to preparation as soon as your interventions are approved. So there's no webinar where we're talking, with each other. It's just the video this month. So move right ahead and try to work ahead of deadline so that we can all do the work that we need to do on our part and on your part to meet that October 1st deadline for DOE. Okay, thanks everybody. Call Tina, and it's really been wonderful working with all of you. We'll give you information about how to progress into year 2. And we'll do that probably on October 1st as well. So, okay, sounds good. And remember, year 2 is not condensed, so it's a lot smoother and a lot less hectic. And remember, you're not starting from scratch. So year 2 is a lot easier than year 1, especially condensed year 1. So, okay, thanks everybody, and call Tina if you have questions.